Okay, I'm going to do a video today on self-publishing as an academic. So first off, there's lots and lots of information about self-publishing out there. I didn't find any of that useful, to be honest. I just went ahead and did it. And that's the sort of stupid stuff that I do. Some people will probably find some of that quite useful, having a look at that. But because self-publishing as academic, I think, is somewhat new, a little bit more niche, perhaps. Some of the advice that I saw on self-publishing wasn't that useful. So anyway, something to consider is to have a look at that. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about self-publishing this book, which I'm sure you know by now if you found yourself on my website or my Twitter. I'm going to talk about the context as to why I did it, the good and the bad. What I'm probably going to present is the good that I think is good, that some people might think is bad. And then some that I think is bad that some people might think is quite good. We'll see, or the other way around, whatever. But I'm going to start with a lot of context. The reason for this is that I'm in quite a specific situation, which has enabled me to do this. And it would be completely unfair for me to kind of talk about this in a really positive way that I've found it without you kind of really getting to know why I've done it, what strengths I've got in terms of that have enabled me to do it. So let's get into that first off. So this is kind of somewhat as a celebration, really. I said I'd do this when I sold 200 books. I sold 200 books a couple of weeks ago. I produced 400 with the idea that I'd sell the first 100 or 200 in a year. That was the kind of goal. Then as I'm writing the second and third volumes, I've still got some stock to be able to sell them as a kind of, if people want to come back and buy the first after they've found the second or the third, they can do that. So that's happened relatively quickly. That's been quite quick that I've achieved that. So in that respect, it's a bit of a success story for me anyway. That's why I wanted to do this now. I think at the time, doing it earlier, I wouldn't have had enough of a story to tell. So I've got some kind of positive kind of messages to pass out about this. So the first off of the context, this is my third book. The first two were co-edited collections, and 15, 20 authors in each, so lots and lots of academics involved, but they didn't do that well in kind of any sort of numbers. I found out recently that the second book had sold 22 copies. Now that's highlights something about academic publishing, that their focus is not on producing books anymore. It's on producing e-book chapters for people to download. Now, the publishers get quite a lot of money from that, and we get a little bit of money from that, but there's no books produced as such. There's hardly any. And what books have been produced have probably been ordered by my friends for their academic libraries, and they're probably sat on the shelves and have sat on the shelves since they've been ordered, to be honest. And I don't really like that. That to me doesn't make any sense, to have a book, which I've always thought of books as tools that we read and play with and return to and write on. So I wanted to produce that. So there's my kind of first thing. I'm just fed up with academic publishing. Connected to that, the price of academic books. One of those books, I can't remember the other one, but £105. I think the other one might have been more. And it just means that the notion that you're going to write a book and someone is going to buy this book and then read it and connect with you as an author just evaporates, because no one's buying a book for £105. They go and sit in libraries again. And then finally, I also wanted to be able to never have a book on Amazon and not have to see that there, because see, a lot of people in my sort of area of academia don't like companies like Amazon for very good reasons, but then post links to their book on Amazon. And I can't really, I appreciate that life has these sort of issues embedded in it, right? We live in a complex society, but when they're that obvious, when I know that Amazon as a company is horrific, I don't want to have to rely on selling my book through Amazon. So, do it a different way. So there's a kind of ethical approach to it, I think, as well. So that's the kind of some of the start points. So if your start point is you hate academic publishers, what are you going to do when you've got a book to write? You're going to look at self-publishing. The second thing is, although I'm not rich, I'm financially stable, got a full-time job, and the money that this was going to cost me, if I didn't make any of it back, if I literally sold 0 books, would mean that I'd miss out on a holiday, or a good holiday, granted, but it was never going to be something that would leave us without rent, right, or a mortgage to be paid. It was an amount of money which I was happy to gamble with, knowing the gamble would probably pay off as well. So financially relatively stable. I think it's a text as well that a lot of publishers would want to have changed in various ways. I won't get into the details. This video could go on for hours. So let's just accept that the publishers probably would have wanted to change it in different ways, which I wouldn't have been happy with. Secondly, they wouldn't have liked what I wanted out of the book in terms of its design and its delivery. I wanted a high quality of paper stock, which was good to write, and I wanted lots of space on the pages. I wanted people to be able to write on the pages. I wanted a design which felt nice and required processes to it. And academic publishers, for an academic at my level, small-time academic, would not want to put that sort of investment into designing it to the level I wanted it at. I didn't want an e-copy. I don't want an e-copy of the book. I want people to have the book and own it. Also, the chapters need to be read as a thing. It's a tool that needs to be revisited. E-books just, it doesn't work in that way. It doesn't make any sense. It also is a kind of somewhat of a mass appeal book. It's about social science research methods. There's a lot of overlap to different levels of academia, from probably third-year undergrad up to mid-level researchers, especially researchers who are getting into qualitative research for the first or they're novices in that area. So there's a big appeal across different disciplines: psychology, social science, psychology, social psychology, sociology, anthropology, political science, anything that's using qualitative methods. So there's a good mass appeal there. So the opposite of would be your kind of super niche textbook about this topic in this discipline. That's probably not a book which suits, unless you've got a really good profile, that suits being produced by someone who's taking all the risk. That would be a book that I'd say, yeah, get an academic publisher to take the risk on that one, and probably would suit the e-copy, kind of the e-book sort of format quite well. So although I'm not a big time academic by any stretch, I have some profile as well. So I'm not big enough to get an academic publisher to invest in me, but also I'm big enough to be able to sell some copies and to be able to tell people about this thing. I've got some sort of network. I've been around for a few years. So I think that's something to be aware of. If you've just joined academic Twitter and you've got 10 followers, you've got to think, how are you going to let people know about this book that you've got? So I was relatively confident that there'd be enough people would engage with me and the way that I do things, and that I had some confidence that we'd do all right there. My wife is a designer and a strategist, so I didn't have to pay for the design of the book. Something to be aware of. Now, what I don't want people to do is think that that means that it's prohibitive for someone else. It's not at all. Publishers will help you design a book. They will have an in-house designer, and it's relatively simple. If you want a relatively simple design, to get someone to design the book for you, the layout is not that complicated. Now, we designed this to the nth degree, and we did a lot of work on it in different ways. So that's something that needs to be kind of taken in consideration. And I also have other costs elsewhere which you might not have, like I can't spell, so I've had to spend a lot of extra money on the copy editing. So where you might save on copy editing, you could then spend on the design. So there's a kind of balance there to be made. I also had a website in place already. So one of the worst things you could do is get a book and then go, right, well, how am I going to sell it? Well, I had a website and I'd invested in that already. Part of this is that I had a vision in place. So a 5-year plan, which was taking into consideration these 3 volumes of the book, which I knew wanted to sell myself. So I set up the website and put 6 months of work into the website to produce content for that, to get followers on that, to produce more followers on Twitter, to be able to sell the book, and then for it to carry on cycling like that. So there's an overarching plan there, and you have to think about what that plan looks like. There's a strategy. The strategy can't be, I'm going to write a book and sell it. There's much more to it than that. I won't go into that in detail. If people want some conversations about strategy, I'm more than happy to have them, but I'd just say you need a strategy, and it needs to be more than a 1 year, what you can do this year strategy. It needs to be a 5-year plan with some sort of multiplier loops, which give a positive feedback. And also, I have some personal experience of manufacture and promotion of things. Won't get into the detail again, but when I looked at the idea of producing something myself, I had no fear of that. I knew that if I went to a printer, they would help me print it because that's what their job is. So I think most people would be like, how do I even start trying to get a book made? You go to a printer and you ask them to print it and they'll go, right, here's your prices. And if you pay it, they'll do it. It really is that simple. There's lots of other stuff, but the production is not difficult. That's what printers do, right? So that's the context, right? You can see there's some overlapping skills there that basically lead to a place where you're like, all right, I kind of understand why he would start to think that way. That should help you give a little bit of context. That shouldn't put anyone off. I don't think there's anything that I've said there that is like completely unique or can't be sorted out. So bear that in mind. Yeah, but it does have to be bared in mind, right? All of that stuff. Okay, so I think the next few comments are the good, but some people I would understand could see them and think that they're bad. So I'm going to present them as good, and I know that there might be some examples as to why you might go, well, that doesn't really work for me. So the first thing is, I had a lot of skin in the game. So I'd financially put the money up, right? The first 2 books that I did had no skin in the game, other than we'd put a lot of work into it. So if the book didn't sell, it didn't matter. The publishers put the risk in. Not a lot, actually, because they don't sell that many books. And they put a massive price on them, so they're covered. But nevertheless, I did. And I put a lot of money up front, bought 400 copies of the book, sat over in my office in the corner. Not 400, luckily, because that's a big pile of books. About 180 left. And I took them, I paid for them, I brought them back and they sat there. So there's that investment. Now, that means there's no messing around with like, oh, this is good enough, or I wonder who will buy this. It's like, okay, this has got to be really, really good. And I've got to have a market, and I've got to consider the market, and I've got to push it to that market as well. With the previous books, especially when I saw the price that we're retailing at, I was like, well, I'm not going to encourage people to buy that book for £105. While I was talking to people about this, actually, and I was saying, like, what would you pay for a book? They're like, I'd never pay for my own book. Someone literally said that, and I agree. I'd never pay for my own book. I'd never pay for my own academic book because it was too expensive. How ridiculous is that? So anyway, I have some skin in the game. Got sidetracked there. Sorry. I've got some skin in the game. Nothing worth having is easy, right? So I've put some effort into it, and I've gone, right, this book is worth this money to me. I've got some skin in the game. It makes me do more. It makes me work at it. It makes me set up the next book, and it gives me something to kind of really work with. So the next good thing was that financially it's been a success. I won't go into the details of it, just to say that I've basically made the money back, and that the sale of the next few books will pay for the next book to be produced, and there'll be some profit at the end. Now, I've given a bunch of the books away, and I'm happy to give more away. I'm not, let's say I could make 500 quid over a course of 2 years of selling this book, right? Like, I shouldn't laugh at 500 quid. It's nice, but 500 quid over 2 years, I'd rather give the books away and just break even. As long as I break even, I consider that as a financial success for this. Once you understand that academic publishing doesn't make you any money, as a small-time academic, it makes publishers money. Once you accept that as a point, it kind of opens things up, because you're not like, oh, how am I going to make whatever the amount of money that I need to cover the time that I've put into writing this book? Well, you won't, because it will take ages to write and there's not enough money. So if you can, just take money out of the equation, because then you don't mind giving books away to people, and you see a student who wants the book and you can let them have a book for free. And they're going to learn from you, and they're going to take your advice, and maybe in a few years' time they'll come back to you and say, oh, I've got this project, do you want to be involved? So those sort of things, I think, have more value than earning a fiver from a book. Okay, one thing that I thought wouldn't happen, which has happened, the sun's changed. Just let me do this a second, get a bit of a glare. There we go, that's a bit better. There we go. Didn't want to look too sweaty. I'm a bit sweaty, it's hot here, but not that sweaty. One of the things that I didn't think would happen is that libraries bought it. I assumed libraries would look at my website, and that you have to pay through Twitter, through PayPal, and they'd be like, "F this guy. We're only buying from Routledge or Springer or whatever." But they did. They have, not loads. I don't want it in loads of libraries because it's priced to a way in which students can buy it. So why would I'd never push to libraries, because it's not there to be sat on a shelf. It's there to be read, but libraries will buy it. So that's quite nice. One nice surprise that I got when I was out one night getting drunk was that someone bought 10 books. Now it's 30 quid a book plus postage. And that came through in my PayPal. Okay, let's have a few drinks. So that did happen. It happened to be a library. I thought it was a mistake at first. I thought I'd have to refund the money, but no, it was a library that put an order in for 10 books. So that's good stuff. A few more of them. If anyone knows any libraries, you want to put an order in for 10, go for it. I'll buy a pint. I've had complete control of the whole process. Now, if you're a control freak, that's great, right? If you're not, and you get scared of controlling all of the minutiae, or you haven't got the time, or you feel like you don't know how to do it, well, that's a worry, isn't it? But for me, I've loved it because it aligns with the vision that I've got. Go back to what I said earlier. I've got a vision. I've got a 5-year plan. If you don't have that, how can you align the book with it? So the ethics of the book, the production of the book, that it's on recycled paper, that I got it from a local printers, that I don't have to sell it through Amazon, that I use the local post office, that it's written in a voice that's my voice, that I know that students who I know who are starting their PhD process will use it for 3 years, and they'll be able to come back at the end of that time and revisit it. Everything makes sense as to how I want to work as an academic and be as a person. So with that vision, the control makes sense for me. Without that vision, the control doesn't add up, because which directions are you trying to control things in? So the control is a good thing, but something to be wary of if you don't know how to control it, right? Control of a car is great if you can drive a car. And this is something that people would reject. And I this next one, and I've rejected this before in my career, but it helps the growth of social media. Now, I get it. Everyone has a problematic relationship with social media. That's fine. Once you get past that and you can control your social media and realize you use it as a tool, which I do with Twitter, it becomes useful. And Twitter's been fantastic in terms of most of the sales and most of the promotion have happened through Twitter, and it's grown my Twitter. In the meantime, that drives more people to the website, which will drive them back to the Twitter, which will help me sell the second book, which helps me get guest lectures, which drives people to my Twitter, and this cycle continues on. So in terms of the opportunities for social media, they are exponentially bigger when you self-publish, because instead of getting 2 books from the publisher to give away, I can give away 100 books if I want tomorrow. I'm not going to do that, but I could. And over the next year or so, I probably will give quite a few books away. And each of those moments are nice because I get to give books away to people. But also it means that the opportunity for social media development and to get the message out is enhanced. So connected to that, promotional opportunities. I can basically do what I want. I can give some books to people. I can offer them for free. I can ask people to post about the book. I can ask somebody to do a review. They can ask me if they want a review, and I can just say yes to everything. The books don't cost me that much per unit. Now, I've got to be careful, right? I've got to consider making some money back. But if someone wants to get in touch with me and say they can't afford the book, I'm going to sort them out. That's not a promotional opportunity as such, but that's where I am with it. It means I can send stuff out to people and say, look, how's about I do a guest lecture with you? I'll send you a copy of the book. And then I can go do a guest lecture and I can be in front of that group of students, and some of them might buy it when they go into a PhD, whatever. These things don't lead into like direct sales, like, oh, I did that and I got this sale. It's too complicated. It doesn't work like that. But the ability to have books and to give them away and to do competitions is really useful. Direct contact with the people who are buying the book. So I send an email to every single person who buys a book when I pack the book up, because I get the book and I've got a little process in the office, and on the front there's a place for me to write a little inscription and what number. Can't make the, you see the number there, what number the book is out of the 400. So it has a personalized inscription. It goes to the people. I send it to the people that buy it. I send them an email and I ask them to send me comments back. I ask them to ask questions and to engage with me. And I genuinely mean it, because I want that to happen, because I want to make connections with people who are using the book, for good or bad. If they don't like it, I want to know about that so I can change it on the second edition. But hopefully so that they enjoy it, and hopefully so that if they enjoy it and they've got questions, I can help clarify it. And that direct contact with people is amazing. It's been really, really cool. It's opened up a bunch of different things, mainly for me to help other people. But who knows what will happen down the line with that. Now, this is a good and a bad, because some people will be like, oh my God, I don't want to interact with people. A lot of academics, right? You know, it's not harsh to say that they're nerds and they don't like to interact with people that way. And they're also very, very busy, and they don't necessarily want to direct the time in that way. That's fair enough. And some people might not like that. But for me, it's one of the best parts about the book is hearing from people who I've sent one to and it's been really useful, and hearing people who are getting it at the start of their PhD, which happened yesterday, actually, getting it to start their PhD in October. I'm like, this is perfect for you, because you're going to start it, and I know that it will make some sense. But I also know that when you reread it in the final year, it will make more sense and different sense. And that journey's there, and I want to hear about it, and I get to hear about it. I did a small run. Now, I don't know, is 400 small? Comparison to how many books I've sold of the previous one, it's massive. I don't think 400 is a lot. But anyway, whatever. I did a small run, which means I'll probably do the second edition next year, I think. Depends on how hard I push it. So the next volume of the book I'll be finishing next year, but the next edition of the first volume I'll probably do as well, where I'll rewrite some bits, which is kind of cool, because I don't have to wait 10 years to do the next edition of it. I can just do it straight away. So it means where I've got spelling mistakes and where I said something wrong about Erving Goffman and change a few bits and highlight a few things here and there, I can do that quite quickly, which is quite nice. So I made a slight mistake in that when you produce the numbers, there's breaks between buying 200 versus buying 500. And I actually there isn't a big break between 2 and 400. So I ended up paying pretty much the same unit price for 200 as I would have done for 400. I should have just done 200 is what I'm getting at. Long story short, I didn't, and I'm happy with how it's gone anyway. But with a little bit of hindsight, I would have done less. But because it's gone so well, it's fine. It's worked out well. But yeah, I get to do a second edition quite quickly, and that sounds quite cool. It's nonsense, right? It's all nonsense, but I get to do a second edition of the book, and it's all on my say so and how I want to do it, and I've got control of it again. I've kind of already hinted at this, but the multiplier effect. So some sort of profile, some sort of social media presence, a website which people can go to, and now a book they can buy from the website, which gets people to follow me on Twitter, gets a little bit more profile, sends people to the website, and helps people buy books, and it carries on. So the multiplier effect is really useful. One of the things that I kind of advise when I speak to young scholars is to have those things locked in place. So what are those things when you first start? Well, the ability to do good teaching and the ability to publish papers is what you need. But after that, you've got to have your standout paper that people know you for. You've got to then start thinking about what's your thing that people will be like, oh yeah, I know who she is. Yeah, okay, she does that thing. And then you've got to kind of start to think about that strategy, which makes people think of you on that idea. What do you do when they think of you? Is there a website? Is there a paper they can download? I don't know what it is, but you need to have the steps in place so that someone can build on you. Okay. Oh, I know them from there. You should go and look at that thing that they've done there. And then from there, it takes you to here. Oh, I'm going to follow that person. I'm going to stay in touch with them. I'm going to contact them via email. Oh, they do a direct mailer each month, whatever. The multiplier effect is quite important. This book is as part of that process. The ability to have my own control over it adds to that multiplier effect in various ways. Won't get into the detail because this video is already going on too long. We've still got a few more bits to say. But the multiplier effect should be a part of your strategy and your overarching vision, and the book should fit into that. If that doesn't make sense and you're not thinking in that way, you might not be thinking in the right, I don't want to say level, the right strategic mindset to be publishing your own book, right? It needs to have that sort of long-term positive feedback loop process that a business would use. Okay. It means that this is another good element. The ethics of it align with the voice of it, with the design of it, with the delivery of the content. All of it makes sense together. There isn't a bit where it's like, oh yeah, he talks about ethics and research, but then you can buy it on Amazon, where there's no ethics in Amazon's business policy. There's a unity there which makes sense. Now, when you have that coherence to yourself, the way that you do things, and you can pull that through your work, I think that's something that most people value. It's something that's hard to create and to have running through your life, but it's something that I think most people value, and most people look at and go, okay, this guy makes sense. There's something there that adds up, and I think people like that. So that's been something that I've been able to really emphasize with the book. The big thing for me is my book in your hands, in people's hands that are reading it. It's a great. One of the things that I really think the reason why academic publishing is still drifting on somehow as a coherent business is that academics want their book in their hands, right? And that is nice. It is nice to have this in my hands, but it's much nicer to get photos of the thing dog-eared and like written on. And one of my PhD students who's doing work on combat sport sent me one with blood all over it because she's got been using it in the gym and someone had bled on it. Luckily, not her, so she says. So your book in their hands, that's what's significant to me. It's nice to have your own book in your own hands. Great, it's such an achievement, right? But it's not as good as achievement if you can get it in loads of people's hands. That's what was important for me, and that's happened. And also, you can give discounts. If I want, I'm doing one at the minute on Twitter, literally now this week, where I've given 3 books away, and I'm also, anyone who enters by sharing this book can have a discount to the book. It's all on me to do that. If I can financially afford it, then I do it. And it means that I'm going to do that for students who probably financially need a little bit of a leg up anyway. But I can do that if I want, and I can have control over that. Academic publishers will do discounts. Of course they will. You won't know when it's going to happen, or you don't have any control over it. They might tell you, they might not. But yeah, that's something that you can play with as well. So things that are kind of bad and good, I think, that are a bit more obviously bad and good. Those ones before I think have been good. You have to go to the post office twice a week. Now, I've got a 10-minute walk to our post office, which is part of getting my daily physical activity in. And I really like going because I like chatting with Jamal, and I get to go to the greengrocers on the way and whatever. So it works as part of my routine. But I mean, if you haven't got access to a post office, you've got to be aware of that. Direct contact with people. I said this earlier, right? Some people just don't want that. They don't want people email and say, can I buy your book? It's like, yeah, you can buy my book. It's on the website. Oh, how much is it? It's on the website. The people don't want to interact like that. So, if you're not into customer service, which is basically a part of my job now, then that will put people off. And I mentioned this earlier as well. I had to pay loads of money for extra copy editing. Now, when you've got an academic publisher that pays for copy editing, that is a big, for me, because I can't spell very well, that's essential. That's really important. But actually what I found was, because I could pick the copywriter and I could have conversations with her, we actually worked together, and she helped with the tone of voice, and she helped with the tone of voice I wanted, which is relaxed and conversational, like these videos. It's actually quite easy to get wrong. And I went too far at certain times and didn't go far enough at other times. So she helped me with that. Now, the copy editing we've had in the past, the publishers tend to ship it out into different countries. So you have people whose English is better than mine, but they're non-native speakers, didn't grow up speaking English. And they can do an excellent job of copy editing, but just not as good or a different job as the copy editor that I paid for, who is a copy editor by trade and doesn't just pick up spelling mistakes, but rewrites things for people as part of a job. So for me, that was a big extra cost, which you could see as bad, but actually made the book much better. I actually learned loads about English along the way as well. She taught me quite a lot. Then the final one, which I think is a definite bad, which is very annoying, is if you lose a book in the post, tough. You're either refunding it or you're sending a new one, and you just take that hit. It's a nightmare, really, but there you go. So that's my experience of academic publishing, the good and bad and the ugly. If anyone wants to know any more, please get in touch with me. there's lots of details that I've skipped over there to try and keep this video not ridiculously long. In effect, I've absolutely loved it, and I will do at least 2 more books like this. I've actually planned for 5, but I'll do at least 2 like this, and we'll see what happens at that point. So there you go. Right, if you want to know if it's a good thing to do, if you know, the best thing is someone who's done it is going to do it again. I think that's a good standpoint. If anyone wants me to talk about this in podcasts or in groups of colleagues or students or whatever, happy to. Just get in touch. All right, I hope that's useful. Didn't run too long. Okay, see you all later.